Thank you so much, Dr. Walstra. And I'd just like to thank everyone for joining the session this morning. We are at 10:45, and it is my pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Walstra, to the session. For those of you who were lucky enough to catch Dr. Walstra's presentation yesterday, you would know what a fascinating educational journey that she has had. Having completed her MA at Wits in Educational Technology, she's drawn to finalizing a PhD at the University of Pretoria with her research focusing on the influence of virtual reality as an educational tool on teachers' pedagogy, which has, I'm sure, um, given you all the inspiration to share these wonderful tools with everyone over the past 2 days. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being here. In today's How Cool Is That session, please note that you have 10 minutes for your presentation and 5 minutes for Q&A. We will keep you posted on time intervals. Please can I ask you to just smile so that my moderator can take a lovely photo of you. Thank you so much, Dr. Walstra. And the floor is yours.
So, hi everybody. I just want to say that all I'm sharing today is a website, but it's a website that I absolutely love. And I think every lecturer and teacher should use. I also think as a university, you should be approaching Google Arts and Culture and putting information out there. So they've collaborated with museums and historical institutes and all sorts of organizations. And they've then developed this amazing resource, which, if you think of arts and culture in a very broad aspect, they've done that. So it originally started with arts and culture, but it just keeps growing. So in the chat, I've put a link for the notes, but there's also this QR code if you want to take a photo, and then I'll continue. So I'll give you a few seconds. For me, this website is just something that can be used to get information. The resources are valid. They actually give you the references of where things come from, and it just gives you a really good space and a different way of looking at teaching. So the first thing that I thought to share is that they even have a guide for teachers to download in terms of how to navigate the space. When we start playing, you'll see how big it is, and you can get really lost in it. So that's the first thing in the document that you've got if you want to play. The other thing is that they've collaborated with art galleries and museums around the world. So if you're teaching the arts, go and use this kind of website to actually go in. The artworks are such that you can actually look at them. You can see how big they are. And for me, the information around that is just so useful. They then too have got a whole section on how we can learn with art. So you can go in and explore and get your children to experience different scenarios, different art movements, different artists. And so it really becomes a wonderful space from an art point of view that we could be exposing our children perhaps to artworks on a digital platform that perhaps they don't have access to because you can't keep visiting these different museums and spaces. The other thing is if you then download on your phone, so I didn't say this at the beginning, but the website is both an app and it's a website. So Arts and Culture is a website and app, and you just look for this little icon, this one over here, within the space. So Art Camera is when you open up your phone and you look at that, it makes the artwork the real size. So if it's a small artwork, it would be moving your phone a little bit. If it's a huge mural, you need to walk to see how big it is. And so for me, that can really make the view of the artwork really beneficial. But then if you're into drama, there's a whole lot of resources around drama. So for example, there are virtual tours inside a range of different stages around the world. And so you can get your children to actually go in and explore these different spaces and see how they will actually use them and see what they look like and how different they are. There are also virtual tours that take you into different spaces and show you how they are. And these are 360 tours of a range of different spaces that you can go in and explore. And many of them include an audio as well. Then if we start looking at culture, there's a whole section on culture around the world. This was developed and curated by a group of people, but it gives you a really interesting perspective of how culture is different and how they've used artworks within that and exploring that within that space. But then there's another whole section on historical figures. So they're political, they're historical, they are all sorts of countries, all sorts of viewpoints. So if you're teaching history, this could give you another perspective in terms of the historical figures around that. But there are also historical figures that relate to the sciences and other types of genres as well. So not just from an historical point of view. If you then look at the South African section, there's a whole lot of stuff. In fact, Mandela's handwritten manuals are in there, where you can actually go in and page through the book and see the notes that he wrote and within his diaries. You can go for a tour on Robben Island. You can go to the Apartheid Museum. There are a range of different types of scenarios and stories around the sort of what happened with apartheid and the history going forward. And this keeps getting added to. So going to look at just South Africa as alone, there's a really great space. And as I said before, as a university or as universities, go in and see how you can collaborate with them and add perhaps your art galleries, your museums, the kinds of things that you've got to share. But then there's a whole section on science. Again, you can go in and look at them. So you'll see it goes from astronomy to looking at NASA to looking at how things have evolved and changed over time. So it'll be another aspect of this fantastic museum. You can go in and look at things from an invention, sciences, and computing point of view, or looking at sustainability and culture. Or what about art and math? But then they're interactive things. So they're augmented reality type features where you can go in and play. I love pangolins, and there's a pangolin that you can open. And then there's a play space, which is really wonderful for you to engage with, from taking art selfies all the way through to making digital music, to creating poems with AI or postcards, or finding the odd one out from an AI point of view. Looking at how you can actually use this technology can be really meaningful. So think about how we're developing creativity, confidence, problem solving, interactive learning, how we're developing perseverance with these kinds of tools, getting students to focus on a specific topic, teaching them to communicate, pull out information and sharing it, collaborating with others on what they're seeing and developing, and just exploring. For me, it's a really great resource that can be used for research as well. So take this tool, play and explore. Have lots of fun. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walstra. That was fascinating. I myself, with a background in design, find the Google Arts and Culture tool incredibly amazing. I'm going to open the floor for other questions from other people. I definitely have a question, but let's see if anyone else has a question for you first.
Cool.
I see that Ines Almeida has her hand up.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for that lovely presentation. Coincidentally, I actually did a workshop on this week on Google Arts and Culture, so thank you for that. Just my question to you is, because I created a web quest on this app when I was doing my workshop, and the comment was you can get very, very lost, and your students can get very, very lost. Do you have any suggestions in terms of structuring where your students have to go, and how could you give them a little bit more constraints in terms of the topic that you are doing so your students don't go down a rabbit hole?
I think that's one of the reasons why I made the document for you. So I don't know if you saw that at the beginning. So I think when you're making a web quest, take very specific links. And maybe if your students are going to choose something, then what I would do is I would actually give them options within the quest so that they can decide whether they're going to choose something specific in science or something in maths. And I would take them through that journey as not just giving them a general arts and culture, because it's just too big. And then the other thing I would do is I would find content and I would find interactives. So there are lots and lots of interactives on the website. So if you're getting the children to do it, that they can learn about it, but then there might be something that relates in some shape or form that they can actually play as well. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Not sure if there are any other questions.
Do we have further questions? Dr. Walstra, my one comes from still facilitating in the sort of online space with higher education graphic design students. So while it's fairly easy to see the benefits of adding this to primary and secondary education, I've used it with my my niece and nephew, for instance. Have you had any success in higher education implementation? And if so, can you provide an example?
So for me, I've just opened this, so I don't know if this helps. So inside of that, I suppose it's keep looking. So here's a section now that they've got on graphic arts and design that I've just Googled now while we were talking. So maybe it's keep going back to see how they keep adding to it. From a higher education point of view, when I was lecturing about design and technology, I used a few links in terms of the architecture and getting the students to actually explore it from that point of view. And then when they were doing food processing, there's a wonderful section on Brazil and the wastage of food. So we used that as a resource in terms of finding that, and then correlating it to South Africa and restaurant food wastage. So I think it's almost thinking really out of the box when you're using this website. I don't know if that helps.
Definitely, and thank you for showing me this. This graphic art section is a brand new section, so I'm quite excited to share it with my students as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what I really like about this website, is it's so dynamic. It keeps changing. They keep adding, and I suppose that's what makes it really valuable. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think this was a wonderful addition to the How Cool Is That section. So thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you again. And to everyone who joined, thank you very much. If you have further questions for Dr. Walstra, please do find her in one of the networking sessions today. Feel free to contact Dr. Walstra. She has provided her contact details on screen, which is wonderful. And please, just as a reminder that during the lunch hour, we will be meeting with Prof. Nicoline Coetzee, who will speak about self-care, which is very important for all of us in academia. And then also to remember that during our closing session, there'll be great prizes up for grabs, and not to forget to sign up and put your name into the lucky draw by 1 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending today. And thank you so much, Dr. Walstra, for sharing such wonderful, insightful knowledge with all of us.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Bye, everyone.